Yeah, that Chicago airport, I think every time I've been stuck there though, I end up running into someone I know. And so, yeah,
If you ever need a place to camp out, just give me a call.
I
I'm
will.
20 minutes away.
Oh, you are? You're close.
Yeah.
I
There you
always
go.
joke about how the hey Christopher, hey Brian, good to see you guys here. We're talking about being stuck in airports and how we don't travel as much as we all used to here. And I know you can't talk to us, but feel free to put any type of information or chats in the chat.
Yeah, maybe your favorite airport to be stranded in, or where you're from right now, where you're hailing from at the moment.
I used to
We'll
also
kick off.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. We're just going to say we'll kick off the webinar in a couple minutes once everybody gets a moment to join the Zoom.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to, Erin, the new Chase Sapphire Lounge that allegedly is supposed to be opening in Phoenix. I feel like they've had the
Ooh,
signs up for about 2 years. I don't trust it,
I know.
but
I haven't
we'll
seen it
see.
yet either. We'll see what happens.
Welcome, Michelle. Hey, Sharon. We'll
Hello,
kick off the webinar in a
everybody.
couple minutes.
Erin Daly, hello.
Yeah, I'm curious in the chat if anybody is a lounge person. I never used to be one. I used to try to time it so I got to the airport with this little time in between getting there and having to fly out as possible. But I definitely I've had lounge moments lately, and I think it's more so because of timing. I still very much try to eke by where they're almost to the point of calling my name, and then
We have the
I
advantage in
show up.
Phoenix. Our airport is so easy to get through, especially
That's
with,
very true.
yeah, it's a
Very true.
layover.
It's not Boston. It's not LaGuardia. Yeah, we're pretty fortunate. Well, now they have, like, you can even book an appointment with TSA
I know it's
to go
crazy to
through.
walk through.
They're just
Really?
like, your time slot is available. It's
Yeah,
like
here
Fast
you go.
Pass. It's like the old Fast Pass at Walt
Yep.
Disney.
It's like we're at a like theme park, but in an airport now. Good people watching though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hello, Sharon Ziska. How are you? Oh, I know you can't talk, but just saying hi through the chat.
Welcome, everybody. We'll give it one more minute and then Amy will kick off the webinar on strategy. Tim, Sharon says hello.
Yeah, I see that. I'm watching. Yeah.
All right, Amy, if you want to go ahead and kick it off, I will turn it on over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy belated birthday to Miss Erin MacKenzie over here. It was her birthday on Monday. We are so thrilled to have you join us today for our webinar talking about one of our favorite topics that we're going to nerd out on today, which is all about strategy and specifically the role that strategy plays on our journeys through change. So, in our prior session that we had a couple months ago with Joe Calzone and Sean Beatty, we did a little bit of an introduction to this idea of change readiness and what it is. And we touched on what we consider the 4 pillars for change success, which is having empowered, change ready people, well documented and clear processes, clean, aligned systems, and then a clearly defined strategy. And after that session, we said, you know what? There is so much more we could have talked about. In fact, I think we even went a little bit long, much to Katie's chagrin. And we said, you know what? Let's see if we can break this out in and really dedicate a webinar to each one of these pillars specifically. And so today is all about strategy. But before we get into our perspective on strategy, what we wanted to do is just take a minute here, and in the chat, if you would be willing, we'd like to know how you would define strategy. From your lens, what does strategy mean to you? Whether you personally or for your company, what's your definition of strategy? And you can just put it in the chat. I know you didn't know you were going to have to like actively participate. What we do here with our webinars, we like to have this be a conversation versus just an information dump. So if any of you have your definition of strategy. We'll give it a minute. Methods we use to accomplish a goal. That's a good one, Christopher. Applied innovation. Ooh, I like that, Andrew. Setting goals, taking action, understanding what it takes to get there. Yeah, that's an important one. A plan for future success. Yes, you set us up beautifully, Sharon. We would agree that a strategy is, in fact, a plan for future success. Key business direction of travel for the business, or key direction of travel for the business expressed in key goals and plans. These are all really great definitions of strategy, but as we can see, we kind of all have our own different definitions, right, of what we believe strategy is and maybe what it isn't. And so that's what we really want to talk about today. And I am so happy and excited and blessed to be here with this amazing team of Newbery partners. I have Erin MacKenzie, who is, which you all probably know and love, our Vice President of Client Services and our birthday girl. We have Tim Jackson, who's our Senior Consultant of Operations and Technology, and the woman who makes all of this magic happen. We would not be here without her. She is our marketing maven, Katie Cridler. Thank you so much. And I am Amy Yackowski. I am the founder and Chief Evolution Officer at Painted Porch Strategies. And I am just happy to be here helping to support Newbery and your clients and each of you to help be successful as you navigate through change. So today, we're really getting into and rolling up our sleeves and talking turkey all about strategy. We're going to talk about why strategy matters, how strategy can serve as a compass. I think someone mentioned the direction of travel. That was what Brian said. So you're right on par. Some of the time and tactic traps that we can sometimes see when it comes to executing strategy. And then some strategic adoption tips from our lens, from our probably collective 60 years plus of experience in this industry, helping organizations of all shapes and sizes and staffing navigate their change and to come out the other side happy, healthy, excited, and not completely worn out and drained. So as part of today's webinar and something that you can use as a guide, you should have received in your email, I think yesterday, a link to download a strategic change canvas. And this is something that if you didn't download it yesterday, Katie, I think you have posted, yep, she posted a link to this document. Definitely grab it if you haven't already, but if you don't, it's okay. We're not going to necessarily be going through each of these elements today in today's webinar, but we wanted to share this with you as a tool that can help you start a little bit of curiosity and conversation and strategic plotting within your organization, whether you're in the middle of a new change initiative, or maybe you're thinking about it, or possibly just getting started. This can be a great template just to help you start to get those strategic wheels turning and help you begin to develop a language around what it is you're doing and why. All right, so we talked about a few slides ago, I asked you to define and think about what your definition of strategy was. And there was a lot of different definitions, all very great, all true to some extent, but we really wanted to dig into, what strategy is and why it matters, and maybe dispel a little bit of, I'll say, misconceptions about strategy. But before we get into that, we wanted to just talk a little bit about why strategy matters. Now, for those of you who have been on a webinar before with me, or this is your first time, hello, I love statistics. I will always throw at least a couple of statistics in any conversation that we have because it helps just shine a little bit of light and meat around the reason we might be saying do this and don't do that. So when it comes to strategy, the reason why it matters is that 64% of projects tend to fail due to poor execution. And if some of you are leaders, this might be you on the call or maybe someone that you work with, only 2% of you have real confidence in whether or not your team and your organization is going to achieve most or all of your strategic objectives that you've set out to try to achieve on your change journey. And unfortunately, the truth is, and we can all attest to this to some extent, whether a little or a lot, about 68% of projects get delivered. And when they do happen, when that proverbial go live is achieved, that summit is reached, they are usually over time and over budget. And so the reason why we're here today is because really without a solid strategy, change initiatives can often bump into some of these barriers and they can fumble, they can fizzle, or sometimes they can outright fail. In fact, Project Management Institute survey recently said that unclear project goals and objectives are among the top reasons for project failure. 10. Let's get this show going. When we think about strategy, from your perspective, why does it matter and what are the impacts that you see that a good strategy can have in an organization?
Thanks, Amy. I'm glad to be here today. I think it's important that everyone has a strategy. The question really is, can you name it? And is your leadership agreeing with your strategy? If you play a role in projects and in executing business plans, there's a strategy. You have it intuitively, but is it shared? Can you name it? If you can name it, you can work with it. But if you don't name it and give it structure, a real strategy, you're going to struggle to execute on alignment. And it's clear that we may muddle through. We sometimes win, lose based on luck, or sometimes our competitors are worse than we are. So we're the last man standing. So the role of strategy really is, I think everybody has one, but can it be named? And is it a good strategy? Does it carry the right elements of strategy? And today we're going to talk about what those elements are. But to me, this whole idea of working with a strategy, defining it, getting it in place so that we can talk about it is the first step in this process. Amy, does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Naming it first and foremost. And I think making sure that other people can talk about it as well, right? Having a name, and I think you mentioned this just a little earlier, also having it presented, distributed, communicated. Those are keys. If you're the only person, if you're keeping that strategy super tight to your chest and nobody else knows, it's like your secret plan that you're trying to hatch. Then it's going to be a lot more difficult to get that alignment and to help people support you along the way. All right, so Erin, there's also this idea of what strategy is and what it isn't. So from your lens, what do you think when you think about strategy? What would you say strategy is?
Yeah, great question. And I think that everyone in the panelists or the participants that were here has some really great examples that they put forth. And it was awesome to kind of see that. But when I think about strategy, I really think of it as it's a deliberate plan of actions that is designed to achieve a longer term goal. And so how do we do that? We're achieving a longer term goal with strategy by aligning our resources, which we'll chat about more. What's our processes? What's our priority? It involves kind of making these informed choices to really truly drive meaningful results. And to Tim's point, also making sure we name it, we have the structure, write it down. Let's communicate. What is that? Once it's been defined, let's make sure it's really, really clear throughout the entire organization. Write it, have it in all of your letterheads as you're going through whatever the project might be. And you might be thinking about strategy and different things. It might be a new technology rollout. It might be just a course of action that you're looking through. So some different examples could be you're looking to improve efficiency, you're enhancing client services, you're streamlining your recruiting process. Like I said, you're rolling out a new technology. So having a really clear strategy is going to help you drive forward, but that strategy has got to be named. It's got to be written out. You need to have alignment across everyone. And then strategy is also making sure you have those resources, you have those processes, and you know what those priorities are aligning in there. And I'll let Tim kind of probably comment on some of the stuff of what it isn't, because I just kind of went through what it is, but there's also a lot of things of what is strategy not. And I think we all have examples on that front.
Thanks, Erin. It's the first thing is strategy is not a project plan, and to assume your project plan is your strategy is management malpractice. That we don't serve our team, we don't serve our organization and ourselves well when we just rely on our project plans. And many of us are, I would call us, especially some of the people on this phone, we're killer executors. We know we can put together a team. We know we can transfer process knowledge. We know we can deliver at the end, but it doesn't work without a strategy. So this idea of being a terrific executor with a project plan is not strategy. Strategy is that goal statement with a path to success, as many of you have commented. It's the idea that your strategy is informed by your capital, the 3 C's, the capital, capacity, and capabilities. Do you have the resources to do the work in front of you? Do your resources have the capability to do the work? And is there a I'll call it the time available? And some of you on the call I know personally, and you all are very busy. So someone says, here's a strategy, let's execute it. One of the first things that, whether you say it out loud or not, is, do I have the time to do this? How am I going to execute this? So that, to me, strategy is alignment at the high level around the how we do this work. And it relates to the people that are lined up, the right mix of the outsiders, people like Newberry and Amy. Do we have a process? And are we using the right technology? So it's somewhat oversimplified. But I think it's important to realize that strategy is not a project. It is really an all-encompassing set of statements that build off of your mission, vision, values, and articulate both a market opportunity or internal cost structure opportunity. So in so many ways, it's more than just that plan.
Yeah,
Amy?
I think you nailed it. You nailed it perfectly. It is not a project plan. It is not going live on a new technology, right? It's the greater purpose, the greater vision around it that you're trying to achieve. It's really, like we like to talk about, it's your compass. It's meant to be the path that you point towards, not necessarily the destination that you're trying to get to per se. So when we think about this idea of your strategy serving as your compass, we've seen examples where a strategy has been this trusty guide, this trusty map that we can look to help inform us where we're going. But we've also seen some instances where the strategy either isn't there, or it's either a little too specific in an outcome, or it's a little too broad. And we find that sometimes some of our clients can be a little bit, as we like to say, lost at sea along their journey. So Erin, I would love for you to share, because you when we were doing this prep, you shared some amazing stories of some clients who had a really well-defined strategy and what that meant, like what that looked like when they had that strategy. Can you share a little bit about one?
Yeah, most definitely. I'm going to use one example because I think there's a lot of clients I've worked with that have had some good strategies, and I will save the bad strategies for after. But one client that really sticks out that had a really incredibly strong strategy was a client out of Atlanta. They've gone through some changes since and their leadership side, but their main strategy was they were going to a new ATS. So they were getting rid of the old ATS. They were finding that there were so many different manual processes. There was outside resources that they were using, from Excel to Word to you name it, that people were just doing. So their strategy was transition to a new ATS that streamlines manual processes for all users and ensure that every user was exclusively using the new ATS and eliminating the reliance of external applications. I wrote it down because this is what they actually had. So it was awesome. So this meant not just the recruiters, not just sales. This meant accounting, onboarding, credentialing. Everyone had to be really kind of working within this new system. So in order to define this strategy, they all aligned with not only the leaders from the top down, but they also had different core members of each team. And they put this together. They wrote it out. They had it. They communicated it to the entire organization. They also then took that part of, who do we want on our team? What are our resources? Who needs to be involved? Who has the time? What are we going to do as we go through this? They identified SMEs. It was phenomenal. Their strategy was incredibly successful. They did a phased rollout, so they were very in alignment. They had a phased rollout. They did their front office first, and they always kept their strategy, or their North Star, their strategic compass. They always kept that at the forefront. And anytime something else came up that did not align and it wasn't related to going back to, is this streamlining a manual process? Was this an outside? They put it in a parking lot. They said, we'll get to this later. So they were really, really, really strong on this. They didn't overcomplicate what they were doing. They had OKRs throughout. They had milestones. They had timelines. And they just really kind of drove success, and they made sure that they communicated what was going on with the project, not just in their internal team, but they rolled it out to everyone, because it was so important for everyone to see that North Star, to follow that goal, the strategic compass, and be aligned, that it was so successful. They were one of the only clients I can really kind of think of that hit their go live dates, hit all of their milestones, hit all the processes, and still today they're running incredibly successfully. And it was because they had that plan and they thought through it.
That's awesome. And again, we're going to touch on some of the ways that you can get started, but if you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to download that strategic canvas. It'll just help you start to answer some of these key pieces that Erin and Tim have been touching on, to help you just start to think a little bit deeper and a little bit broader than going on a new system as the overall strategy. There was more to it than just this target, this destination that they were trying to get to. It really is less about the how, as Tim alluded to. It's not a project plan. The strategy is less about the how. It's really more about the why, the who, and the what. So Tim, you had some thoughts that you shared in our prep call about, like, when we think about that why might someone be doing this, and kind of what's your, I'll say, your Polaris, right? That's pulling you in a certain direction.
Thanks, Amy. I think it starts really with understanding your role as a firm, your place in the market, the customer perspective. Who are your customers? In staffing, we have the benefit of really having two clients. We really have the business who are that we work with and contract and see opportunities from, and then we have the talent markets. And those two markets need to be understood, need to be acted upon, and our strategy needs to be, connected to those two customers. We understand our delivery systems and our processes. We understand who our competitors are and what the market is. So we have these essential touch points in strategy that inform our view. So it can be, I need to retrofit I need a mobile strategy for the talent market. Well, it's not just implementing a mobile strategy or using your technology partner's tool and going through the implementation step. It's really understanding how that technology transforms the relationship with our clients, with our teams internally, and how it's going to be managed over time. And only when those strategies are articulated and everybody kind of nods their head and begins to act in accordance with that strategy do you really have a, I'll call it a good chance at success.
Yeah. And it starts by asking some of those key questions that you touched on, like, why are we doing this? What is the driver behind it? Is this to try to keep up? Is this to double down on what differentiates us? Why are we doing it? And also, who is it impacting? Those really important pieces. In addition to this compass of setting the foundation of the why and the where, there's often a piece sometimes that we miss as part of our strategic planning. And it's really getting clear on success. So Sharon or Erin, I was going to say Cher and Erin at the same time. So Erin, I know that we've talked about some of the ways that you can ensure that your boat is moving in the right direction, that you're following the strategic compass, and you're not just waiting, say, until the end to determine whether or not you got there. You ended up in the right place. So talk a little bit about the success and how would you measure success throughout a project?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely key that you have someone that's driving the strategy forward and helps establish success measures, whether this is through AKRs, whether this is through your KPIs. So it is incredibly important to have that established up front. So what are you going to put in play to measure your success? And pending what your actual strategy is or what you're doing for the project, that's going to also help determine that. But if you're thinking about, okay, we are implementing a new software, a new technology. Well, one of your AKRs throughout is, what are we going to do for adoption? Do we have training that's involved? Are they one of the resources? So then at the end of the project, when you're actually measuring this, okay, if your goal in your OKR was to achieve a 90% adoption rate, did you do that? Did you have things in place? Do you have surveys? Are you checking how many times someone is logged in? Or if it was a sales growth, how are you, did you make sure you measure what was your sales before you started the project? What was the sales after? How are you going to measure that? So putting those key things in place, pending what your actual type of project is incredibly critical. And I would always recommend to have those OKRs, have those KPIs for your adoption, your utilization, your proficiency, whatever the indicator might be, and having that in place will be incredibly important for you.
Yes, success beyond just go live, because there's the notion that if your measure of success is going live, you could technically go live tomorrow. You could flip the switch tomorrow and start using it. That doesn't mean anyone's actually going to use it. They're going to like it. They're going to want to use it. They're going to go back to their old stuff. So having that clear definition of success is really important. I love on the Painted Porch, our Chief Joy Officer, Sierra, she always talks about setting expectations and having clarity on them. And if you think about even the example of baking a cake, are you baking a cake that is meant to be this beautiful Instagram worthy cake? Is that your goal? Is that your measure of success? Or is the measure of success that you want everybody to enjoy the cake and have it taste good? Because it can taste good and maybe not look too great, or it can look perfect, but no one wants to eat it. So getting really clear on those success measures. So all of this is setting up, right? We know that a solid strategy can help build alignment and shared understanding of the vision and the direction for the company and your change. But there's a catch. And it's that tricky little which that we sometimes deal with, which is time. I know that we have all heard instances where we just don't have time for strategy. We're behind in the market. There's restrict, there's our demand is less, our competitors are doing more, our technology's too old. We got to go, go, go. We don't have time. We're already behind. We don't have time for this strategy. And I always say, if you don't have time for strategy, you don't have time for a successful change. And again, I bring the stats, so I just got to show a couple of them. When we think about strategy, 85% of leadership teams spend less than 1 hour per month on strategy. This thing that is meant to be your overarching, like Braveheart charge into battle. They spend less than 1 hour per month on it. And the truth is, 50% spend no time at all on strategy. So, Tim, about this timing of strategy, why is it so hard to maybe not take the time, or how can this be a struggle for organizations when it comes to taking time for strategy?
Erin, if I could dive in here, excuse me, Amy, if I could dive in, or I think it's important that we acknowledge that one, the challenge of this, and two, the reason we don't take time is because we frankly either we don't know how to execute that strategy, we don't have to know how to have that strategic conversation, and that's where frankly there are some outside resources that can help you structure a strategy. Sometimes people think that that's, I'm going to use the word fluff, but in reality it's the test of alignment with people. So I think that one, this notion of strategy, we need to name it. We need to have it understood and written down. It needs to flow from that mission, vision, values that articulates for our company. So whether it's I'm going to build a back office system that is scalable at lower cost so that I can win the game by executing on my growth strategy of acquiring companies, or which is a common theme in our business, or it's I want to be able to execute a front office engagement strategy with both clients and our talent markets through the evolution of self-service and allowing everyone to use their phones to interact. These are big strategic themes that require everybody to buy into. And then this little project that says, oh, I'm going to implement this system, work in bullhorn automation, some component. And it's so you can't just do that component without tipping your hat back to the original strategy, which is I'm going to deploy and take advantage of mobile technology. So to me, people get caught up in I'm going to execute the project plan and I'll be okay. I won't get fired. I'll be promoted. But it reaches back to that strategy.
Yeah, Erin, what about your thoughts? Where have you seen it having an impact when you don't take the time for strategy, and maybe what can be done about it?
No, great question. And first off, I think people that say they have no time for strategy is truly an excuse. So that's just my personal opinion. I think we should always have a strategy and make time, and I'll dive into that as well. But when people don't make time for strategy, what I've seen most common is we get a lot of resource wastage. And what I mean by that is we have inefficient kind of resource allocation. So whether it is somebody is overutilized or they're underutilized. So and that can also cause a lot of kind of impacts to what is the overall strategy. Is it a new technology that you're implementing? So that can cause delays. And I find that with that kind of resource wastage and not taking the time to define the strategy, define the process, define who's going to be on the project up front, and making sure that they have the time allocation, you can run into major issues. You might also have to flip that resource out. And don't be shy. If you think that you put somebody in the wrong position and they don't have any time to spend on their day job and they're just spending it on this, well, then maybe you need to make some changes yourself. Or maybe they should just be on there doing the day job and not on this project. So I always say, don't be shy to also pull somebody off. Like, make sure that your strategic compass is always in alignment. You want that to be your forefront. So you can always kind of look at it. Or if we're talking about being out to sea, you can have them walk the plank. But don't really make anyone walk the plank, but it could be a really fun analogy here. But the biggest thing with like no time is that resource side is huge, and you falter off course. I mean, you're going to be drifting. You're going to be out there. If you don't have the time for strategy, it is so easy to think that you're going north, and now all of a sudden you just got turned around and you're going south and you have no alignment, nothing's working, you're going in circles. So making that time, both a lot of time up front and then also throughout the project, to make sure you have alignment is just kind of critical for your success and making sure everyone's on track.
Erin, I want to dive in here as a veteran of many projects, some of them terrifically successful, but some are not. And the lessons learned from these projects that didn't work out was that I didn't execute the strategy lever properly. I didn't use the power of strategy to bring people to the table to resolve the kinks in the process that were obvious to me, that we were having trouble in testing, having trouble in building reporting, or having trouble in design, where I could have used strategy to bring the right people to the table. And I did. I assumed my team could execute, and all of a sudden I woke up and now it was too late.
Yeah, that's such
Yeah.
a great point. The training side. What are you doing for training? How are you doing it? Mapping it out. That's such a big part of the strategy of how
Yeah.
you're going to achieve it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
completely agree.
And I think we've all seen those instances where if you don't take the time now, you're going to be forced to take the time later because you are so off course. So it's like you can either intentionally and mindfully plan for it, or there's going to be a point in your project. We have all been there. I'm sure many of you on the phone have also experienced it, where you almost have to put everything on pause because you're like, we have no idea where we are. We are so off course. What the heck is this thing that we just created? We need to stop and either completely start over, or we have to get our bearings and recalibrate and figure out where the heck we are and move forward. So time will always present itself. You can decide whether or not you are in the captain's seat or you're caught in a tsunami of strategic realignment. So I do want to, before we move on though, Tim, I have to quote you because I think this is a brilliant thing when we think about strategy, that when it comes to taking the time to do it, is that it's really not complicated. I love the way you said it. It's not complicated. It's just freaking hard. And the hard is really the taking the time, swallowing that pill and taking that time, pulling those resources off of their core jobs and sitting them in a room for a day or a couple weeks and getting this really, really clear. And it
Yeah.
really comes down to those pieces that you talked about, Tim. Yeah.
Amy, unfortunately, I have seen a project in the recent couple of years where I knew when we did our conference room pilot that we were in deep trouble because the client didn't play the role they needed to play. We executed the CRP and we got it through and it was properly done, but the
Check
right
the
people
box.
weren't in the room, and it you could tell that was an early sign of disconnect, early sign of misalignment. And as I reported it to the process and tried to bring it forward, it was a continual touch point of, wow, that was a precursor of bad things to come, and unfortunately, bad things happen.
Hmm. Yeah, we can often see it on the horizon. The Kraken is coming.
Yeah.
Can often see it, but sometimes, either because of our role or the situation, we're hesitant to speak up until it's literally there wrapped around our boat, pulling us down into the depths to Davy Jones' locker, right? We're going deep on this sea theme. I'm all about it. But I think you touched on it, Tim. It's really focusing on those key things, laying that foundation for the vision, the importance, your success measures, and some of those other elements in that canvas. And also knowing that it's not a one and done. You said it, and throughout the course of the project, you're continually revisiting it and saying, okay, just like you would if you were on a boat journey of some sort, it's not a straight shot. You're constantly navigating maybe where there's rougher waters that now you have to go around, or maybe an unexpected I don't know much about boats, so I'm going to clearly show this, like a water burst that you have to navigate around. So all of those things are, I know, Erin, you're shaking your head. I think I'm doing all right with it. But
I'm
all of
liking
these
it.
things are really when it comes to strategy. But there's one key piece about all of this that is really the linchpin for a successful strategy, and that is those darn people. Sure that we have the resources, we have people, so that way we can have successful strategic adoption. It can die, that beautiful strategy that you mapped out, whether you use the canvas or something else, if it's not co-created and continually revisited and revised and communicated with your leaders in your entire organization, you're not going to get very far. So who are the right people, and how can you ensure that you have the right people that are rowing in the right direction? So Tim, let's talk a little bit about resources and
Sure.
maybe who we need and what the expectations are.
So I always start with the primary sponsors. Who are the leaders that are bringing this idea to the table and who are sponsoring it? You can't move forward without having that as your anchor. Then you have your core project team and change teams, and those two can be separate. People who execute versus the change team. They are made up of course, of many people, often some outsiders to make it happen. There's your business subject matter experts. We need the people from the line who know the current state and have been read into this strategy. We need the actual people leaders, the people on the ground who are working with our teams to understand the change, understand, there's many projects, best success is to have these change ambassadors, people whose job it is to check on how, are we on the right path? Do you feel like we've got the right resources? I think the combination of sponsors, the core team, and business SMEs and change ambassadors and people leaders, I think you've got the right mix.
Yeah, and also thinking about, Erin, you touched on it a little bit earlier, how you're adjusting some of their schedules, or, I even like to remind people about their compensation. If they are in a revenue producing role and you're asking them to now be a part of this group, don't make them choose between both. Don't make it Sophie's choice, right? Between the two. Make sure that you are making adjustments to accommodate for this additional, and it shouldn't be additional, I should say this other work that they are going to be doing. It shouldn't be something that is on top of their regular work, nor something that is a punishment to the things that contribute to their livelihood and their compensation. I I had someone recently, a colleague say, when it comes to this idea of strategy and alignment, it's not just that we have the right people rowing in the right direction, but we also want to make sure that they're all on the same boat. All right. So, Erin, what are some ways that companies can ensure that they are, in fact, like rowing in the right direction towards their strategy and that everybody is on the right boat too, right?
No, that is such a great thing. And I laugh about that because you do find very many times where people are on different boats and you're like, wait a second, where are you going? So having everyone on the same boat in that right direction. And when you think about the right direction, I'm sure all of you can think of, if you have two people in a row, you got one side that's paddling forward, one side paddling backwards, and you're just spinning around in circles and circles. I think about that often, and I've seen it too often. So making sure that you do have someone at the helm. I Googled this beforehand because I was like, I know there's a name for this, but when you think about rowing, there's the coxswain. Yes, that's what they're called for all of you people that are learning new boating terms. And what the coxswain is responsible for is steering the boat and coordinating and making sure that it is always facing forward, going the right direction, and they have to make sure the power and the rhythm of the rowers are in sync. So I thought this was a great example for this because it's such a critical piece for us to have when we are thinking about strategy, and having someone that is helping us stay on track. Are we always aligned with that, with our actual strategy goal? Do we have those success measures? Are we meeting them? Is everybody checking in with each person? Are they in a good spot? Have those individual conversations. Doesn't have to be a group. Some people don't like to share where they're at. Like, I don't have time for this. That can be an individual conversation to just check in. And then if you need to make that change, make that change. But it's gauging kind of really, where do you need to be so you can stay forward? So whether it's making sure every initiative is always tying back to your strategy. If it doesn't, like I said before, put it in the parking lot. If it's training and adoption, gauge the effectiveness of the training engagements. Make sure your trainer is involved during the actual entire process. Have actual little surveys throughout. Does this make sense for you? Are you on track? So there's a lot of different things that we can look at as we are ensuring that we're staying on track and rowing in the right direction, but having those key success measures in place is probably going to be the number one thing to make sure that we are staying on course and not off course, and we're also all on the same boat.
Hey, Erin, I want to just dovetail. There's really such a simple statement. We need to own our own behavior, and we need to own our organization's success. And when those issues that Erin just called out are not lining up, we need to make sure that we don't take the view that our project team will manage it like a petting zoo. It's not. We sometimes have to be pretty blunt about what's going on, and that courage to do so, I think, is the hallmark of of most of the successful projects I've ever been associated with.
100%. And to feed off of that, the other key, which I know I briefly mentioned, but it's also making sure the leadership team is also bought into what is the strategy. If you have someone that's going to help from the very top, I know Amy and I have both seen an incredibly successful project where all the leaders were aligned and they checked in with every single department. They even went on site and they made sure strategy was at the forefront. They checked in, they were on site, and it was just such the key to their success. It was phenomenal to really see and have that top down buy-in. So incredibly important.
Yeah, they really embraced this idea of co-created and collaborating change. That one organization that you mentioned, I love it. I think it was the president and his second. They went on a road show. I think they even had T-shirts made, and they went on a road show to all of their different offices, and they continued to talk about it. They kept it top of mind and top of voice for everyone, so that way when you finally got to the thing that you're checking the box on, that go live, it was more of an afterthought. It was like, oh yeah, here you are. We've been waiting for you, as opposed to this thing that's thrust upon them at the end, especially when it comes to training and awareness throughout the engagement. And that's really the key for successful adoption, is making sure that you're collaborating early and often and continually having that conversation. Even that strategic change canvas, there's some organizations, they have it printed out. It's literally on a giant wall in an office that people can go into, and they can continue to review it and add sticky notes with questions or feedback on it throughout the life cycle of the project, whether it's a virtual version of that or an IRL, an in real life version, a paper version. Those are key to making sure that everybody is aware. We're not seeking consensus. We're trying to create context and alignment, not necessarily 100% agreement. And if you do that, your adoption will just increase 10 and 20 fold. So that's our strategic ideas in a nutshell. We touched on just a few key things that we wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, all else fails, you can walk away with a couple things that you can start to do to begin to develop, or maybe even revisit and refine your current strategy. Because like I said, that strategy is all about building that alignment and a shared understanding of the vision and the direction for any project that you're going through. Remember, it's not about the how. It's about the why, the what, the where, and the who. Ooh, I love that, Erin, about Ted Lasso. Yes. Believe, have it visible and at the forefront. Make sure that you're calibrating your compass so that way it aligns with your strategy. They're not polar opposites. They're not pulling in opposite directions. It's serving as that North Star, that guide that you can always look back to, especially in moments of choppy waters or where you feel like you're getting a little bit lost. It can't get done unless you take the time to do it. And you can either take the time up front, proactively, what I like to say is part of phase 0 before you kick off your project, or it's going to have to be shoved somewhere in the middle, because who the heck knows where you're going at this moment, and you need to realign. And then all of this is really hinging on the resources that you have in place, the support that you're providing to them, the communication and the engagement that you are intentionally putting forth to help you ensure that you're getting the adoption that you're looking for. So we're at a point now where we wanted to open it up for questions, but we did want to say that as you start to go through this, if you do have any questions beyond today, as you start to think about and dream about, and maybe you're in the shower and some idea comes to you or a question comes to you, know that all of us are here to help. We, like I said, collectively, I think we have probably 60 plus years of experience doing this, and all of us here are here to help support you and ensure that you're successful, because we've all experienced the good as well as some of the bad, right? Erin and Tim?
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've shared in your tears and celebrated with your wins along with you. And all of this, we want you just to be able to be more successful in the long run. So I think we had a couple questions that came up, Katie, right? A couple questions?
Yeah, we have one question from Brian, and that is, how do you handle strategy in a situation where two businesses are being integrated and the cultures are different? Any pointers?
I have my
Yeah,
2 cents, but I'll
don't
defer to
start the
both of
project
you.
and don't start the project until you actually resolve that problem. That would be my first piece of advice.
Yeah,
Yes.
culture is big because if you have, and there might be different reasons for your acquisition and culture. If maybe one team is a very, very strong culture. I think of Zappos. I think they also were bought because of their culture and was incredibly strong. So make sure that you do have alignment on that before going in. I think that's key to your success. And also maybe that's part of the strategy is defining having a unified culture so we can work efficiently together. And then once you've defined that, I would look at, okay, what's that merger? What do you need to do? And then you have more alignment across the board, because I'm assuming if you're bringing everyone together, you got to have refinement of processes, you're streamlining everything, everyone is one, but having that kind of guiding star of potentially culture is going to be key for you.
The role of governance here is absolute. So not only do you have to have the plan, you have to have a way to manage the conflicts as they come up about. So that governance process is essential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the critical pieces to what we like to call change readiness, right? It's the work before the change, and a lot of that is creating that strong coalition. And I like to say, like, the conspirators for change, right? Creating that coalition within your leadership team, especially if they're a new leadership team, or they're, Brian, in your example, two that are coming together. But also recognize that even within a single organization, you have leaders across all of these different areas within your organization: sales, recruiting, credentialing, payroll, invoicing, account management, all of these different roles. You all may work alongside each other, but you've not actually had to work together when it comes to designing something new often, especially when you think about this strategy. You've thought about your lane and what your team needs to do, but now you're bringing everybody together and creating that alignment beforehand and having some of those rules of engagement, that governance, Tim, that you talked about. Like, how are we going to have healthy conflict? How are we going to call ideas on the mat? How are we going to encourage people to stick our neck out? When are we going to draw the line as far as what's in or out of scope? All of those operating pieces are key before you start kicking off this big change project. Have those pieces in place before you start building the ship. Because the last thing you want, last the analogy, the last thing you want is a mutiny on your journey, and you get tossed overseas, or everybody is fighting to get to their particular destination. Any other final thoughts, Erin and Tim?
Yeah, I also just throw something in there. I would say a strong RACI chart. So when you're thinking about your resource planning, who's responsible, who's accountable, who do you need to consult with, and who needs to be informed is incredibly critical to this and can be really kind of play into your overall strategy when you're thinking about that. So it's something I would, especially for this situation and that example, would be a good one to put in there.
Yeah.
And my final thought would be to make sure that you acknowledge the fact that not every stakeholder is the objective and the solution and the strategy. There are always secondary concerns of individuals. How is my team going to prosper? How am I going to actually manage the change? I've been involved in projects where we replaced the ATS, but they weren't using the old ATS properly. And what makes us think we're going to use the new ATS properly? So just what are the real issues here that are going to come about, not just the project? So asking all the questions, not letting any of them get behind you in terms of have them up on the poster boards early on. So to Amy's point, you've got to lay the foundation properly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hopefully that helped, Brian.
Yeah. And if you have further questions, hit us up, because we've all been through that particular situation to some extent, and things that you could do and things maybe that you shouldn't do along the way. Well, this was excellent. Tim, Erin, thank you so much. I always love talking to you. I know we had, even with preparing for this, every time we met, you just shared more and more bits of insights and best practices. And so thank you so much to both of you for being here. For those of you who are hanging around and you attended, thank you for being a part of this. Again, do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions, or if you would like a little bit of guidance or support on how to complete the strategic map. or something else similar, or what you need to do to become a more change ready organization and get those people and processes in place. Or if you're ready to rock, partner with Newberry. They will be your partner to help move this change forward successfully. So that way you get to your destination refreshed and ready to go for what's next. But this is just the first of a 4-part series. We're going to be diving more into the other elements of change success over the next few months. And so we encourage you to check out the Newberry Partners website, check out our events page, and sign up for our series, because our next one is going to be all about tech and systems and how do you get prepared for what's next, especially if you're on a technology change journey. And so we encourage you to sign up, and we hope to see you at the next one. Katie, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everybody. This will be on demand later, and we hope to see you at the next one.